Hello and welcome to another episode of Fractional Impact. Today we're speaking with Suchi Kommi about the challenges that boards and private equity firms are increasingly facing with the unprecedented convergence of AI, ESG, M&A, cybersecurity, and organizational transformation. Suchi is a Fortune 500 director, non-profit board leader, and veteran management consultant with 2 decades of experience at the intersection of AI, ESG, M&A, cybersecurity, climate risk, and workforce transformation. We'll explore how all of these areas, often managed in silos, can come together to shape portfolio strategy, operational priorities, and long-term value creation. We're also joined by Gianna, a member of the Fractional Clients team. If you'd like to give a brief intro, Gianna.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, part of the Fractional Clients team, and I'm really excited to get into everything with Suchi today.
Awesome. So, Suchi, thanks a lot for joining us. To start with M&A, you've led 28 successful M&A integrations and have been both on the buyer and seller sides of private equity transactions. How does your work or your role differ depending on which side of the table you're on? And what do you find are the most critical steps in making sure a tech integration doesn't derail the whole deal?
Thanks for having me, Stuart. So having run the M&A for Fortune companies, what I have seen firsthand is the way you need to manage M&A for organizations that do one-off M&As should drastically differ from organizations that have M&A as part of their core business strategy, right? So if I am managing M&A for an organization that have a portfolio of companies and M&A being part of their core business strategy and handling acquisitions and divestitures annually is part of business as usual, the way tech organization need to be structured should vary from a traditional organization. Now, why do I say it? Because your organization needs to be nimble enough to be able to address any opportunity the business sees from an M&A standpoint. And the way you structure your tech teams have to be agile enough that you can scale your teams as needed in order to efficiently integrate your acquired entities or the entities you are divesting timely in order to leverage the value of that deal. Now, how does my role differ in terms of whether I am on the buyer side or on the seller side? I would look at it more in terms of the objective we are trying to achieve here, because fundamentally the objective changes from a buyer side versus a seller side. Because if I am a buyer, right, organizationally we would want to have synergies with the acquiring entity, and we want to make sure that the acquired entity's IT posture, is something what we are understanding and something that can align with what we have in place. And we also want to address any potential risks in terms of avoiding any technical debt, and we want to evaluate their cyber posture to understand if there are any regulatory fines we should be aware of, are there any compliance risks. And we also want to understand potential integration risks we have with the acquired entity. So all these would play a major role in terms of M&A due diligence from a buyer standpoint. So all in all, if we look at it, from the overall M&A deal perspective, there are multiple milestones, right? We look at it from a due diligence standpoint, the pre-close activities, close activities, post-close activities. So as a technology leader, you need to have clarity on understanding what activity should be initiated and when, in order to minimize the risk that comes with that deal from a buyer standpoint. Now, another area I would want to share here is, in my experience, I have seen organizations who has M&A as part of their core business strategy, but the businesses have been struggling because they've been handling each M&A on a case-by-case basis. It really means pulling the teams as needed, which disrupts your operational efficiencies. What I recommend there is, have a repeatable playbook for such organizations, because you don't want to be looking at M&A on a case-by-case basis, because if it is part of your core business strategy, you should have a repeatable playbook that fundamentally stays as is. And if there are any deal specifics, that are specific to the deal structure or the geography, if you're doing a global M&A versus, the entity you're dealing with is limited to one country, those are the kind of deal specific that might vary per deal, but your fundamental playbook should stay the same. And that would really help you to be nimble and act fast in order to make sure you're able to close the deal timely and also achieve the synergies you're looking from the deal standpoint. Now, from a seller standpoint, what I would want to do is, I want to make sure that, the organization is well prepared in terms of addressing the questions the potential buyer might ask me. And I would prepare the organization in terms of preparing all the documentation. Do we have all our financial audits in place? Do we have all our technical architecture in place? That would help the buyer to make their decisions quick and wrap up the due diligence timely in order to complete the deal. So those would be my priorities from a seller standpoint.
Awesome. That was a very thorough answer. So thank you. Can you share the leadership experiences that have shaped some of your perspective at the intersection of AI, ESG, mergers and acquisitions, cybersecurity, risk, and organizational transformation?
Absolutely. So over the years, I was fortunate to be able to work at the intersection of all these technologies and also in various industry settings. Now, in my experience, if I look at ESG perspective, right, this is one area that have been really on the back burner for most organizations if you look at it a decade back. But in the last decade, this has really been emerging slowly to the forefront. And I have helped organizations, in terms of, implementing their ESG strategy, identifying all the various data points. But what is more interesting is to see ESG is not a checklist, you put in place in order to disclose to your shareholders or to do your SEC or regulatory reporting. As you get to implementing your ESG strategy and identifying what that strategy should be, you'd really see a lot of, integration points in terms of your core business strategy with other areas, right? It could be your digital transformation, it could be your AI. So there are several points where these intersect. And that is a very interesting space where you can see how all of these come together in order to move the business strategy forward. Now, I would quote some examples of my experience, right? I have implemented AI for various industry sectors globally and cross-functionally. Now, as I've been doing this, what is interesting is to see how, typically we see AI being handled as a separate area in itself. In reality, it is not, because it has to really work with your business strategy and tech strategy in order for it to really materialize and for you to see the ROI. And that's where you see all these intersections coming in. And when it comes to these different industry sectors, I have supported the organizational transformations with is there is this underlying common areas which any technology transformation would entail, such as cybersecurity, analytics, organizational wide automation. So these are some of the fundamental aspect and infrastructure any technology transformation would entail. But then when you look at specific industries, there are some industry specific aspects your technology transformation should care for based on the specific business you are in. For example, if you are in utilities industry, you would be more looking to see how you can utilize technology for grid modernization. Whereas if you are supporting a healthcare organizational transformation, you would want to look at your HIPAA compliance. Do I have all the compliance aspects in place in terms of data privacy, GDPR, and all the regulatory aspects, right? And if you're in industrial sector, you would want to look at how I can better leverage technology in terms of improvising the production capacity at my manufacturing plant. It could be utilizing AI for your manufacturing systems quality control, or it could be utilizing robotics for increasing your production capacity. So these are some of the areas that you would look at from a technology standpoint, besides the common aspects that naturally come with an organizational transformation through technology. And these are the different areas that have shaped my perspectives, having seen various industry sectors and having led these global and cross-functional transformations across these industry sectors. That really shaped my perspectives, in terms of seeing where we could potentially have a risk when these areas collide.
Speaking of AI and automation, these are often seen as silver bullets, but not every implementation delivers ROI. Since 2016, you've led enterprise AI adoption, including early generative AI pilots. How do you decide where to deploy these technologies in a scaling company? And what governance frameworks and leadership practices have you found most effective in scaling AI responsibly?
Now, I would handle this, in three different, pillars, right? I want to first talk about AI strategy, then talk about AI adoption and the AI governance. Now, what we are seeing here in terms of technology trends is, uh, when it comes to AI strategy versus, the speed and the expectation to be an AI first company. These two are a bit competing and colliding at this point. So organizations are really at pressure to be able to be an AI first company. But then the right way of doing it is, well, it is as important to also have an AI strategy in place in order to efficiently deploy that AI into your organization and realize the return on investment. So, and when I am leading the AI strategy for an organization, the way I would handle this is looking at it from multiple standpoint, right? So I would look at it from um, a personal tech and a work tech standpoint. So there is an area we need to understand from an AI perspective traditionally, because what we are really seeing in the conversations and narratives here is a merging of this work tech and personal tech in the conversations, or using these terms interchangeably. But in reality, if you look at adoption cycles between a personal tech versus work tech, they're very different. If you are adopting a personal tech, if I have to start using a chat GPT or a Perplexity or a Claude or a Gemini, I don't have to go through an SOC, or I don't have to comply to certain regulations in order to go and subscribe to that tool, because that is personal tech. I get productivity out of it. I go and subscribe, and I immediately adopt that tool. So that's where there are very fast innovation cycles for personal tech, whereas and adoption cycles across that space. Whereas when it comes to a work tech, I might be the same person, but if I am in technology leadership space, and if I have to bring the same tool to my organization, I would want to look at how that particular tool is handling the intellectual property of my organization. How is it handling the PII data of my organization? And what is the 95% accuracy and up to 5% of hallucination rates we are seeing across these LLM models? What does that mean to my critical organizational data? Do I want to use it in my critical business functions such as tax, payroll, or FP&A? Or do I want to use it at high impact, low risk areas? These are all the things I would consider as I am building the AI strategy. The other aspect is, also bringing my employees along within the strategy, because when it comes to AI deployment, uh, deploying organizational wide technologies is not new for IT. For any IT leadership, we have some excellent leaders across industries who have done global ERP deployments. The way I see AI deployment is going to be different is in terms of change management, because of how early we are in this innovation. Your employees are not just hearing about this technology in your workplace, they are hearing about this in the news headlines every day. There are a lot of narratives from different perspectives, because the AI narrative differs from a shareholder perspective, it differs from a entrepreneur perspective, and it differs from a vendor standpoint, and it differs from a consumer perspective. It also differs from an employee perspective who worries that his job will be taken away. When you hear so many narratives and you're surrounded by so many opinions, it's natural that your employees get confused about, well, AI is being introduced in my organization. Should I give my time to it? Should I even take the time to get trained, even if I was given the training opportunity? I don't know what this is going to do to my job. So it is normal and natural, and we are seeing these kind of concerns across the employee base at this point. And where we need to be cautious when it comes to deploying AI is how we do the change management, right? When we do change management, we normally give narratives, and we have some, excellent change leaders who come up with some pretty presentations, a very good clarity and FAQs in terms of addressing the questions. But where we need to go a little bit beyond the traditional change management we do is helping your employees understand the business rationale of why you need to do this. Why are we doing this? How is it going to help the business if we adopt AI? And that is something I would focus on as I deploy enterprise wide AI. And here is an example I would share here. If we look at ourselves several years back, if you have an employee who is using a paper based system for doing his IT budgets, if you train the same employee in Microsoft Excel and have him understand the tool and get him to learn the nuances of the tool, how it can help him, and ask him to do budgets without telling him whether he uses legacy paper-based approach or Excel. It's natural he would adopt to the Excel, because that is something where he saw the productivity and it is working for him. You don't have to push the employee to go and take away the paper and start using the Excel. He has seen the value out of it, how it helps him to be more productive and efficient. He will naturally adopt. And that is something I would focus on when deploying the enterprise-wide AI, because you really need to help your employees understand the business strategy side, why we are doing what we are doing. That will really build the trust and adoption of these tools. Right. So the other aspect is also about upskilling your employees in helping them understand the various aspects of AI. This is one tool, in the market, we are seeing different terms being used interchangeably. Over the last decade, right? I have worked on generative AI, and previously, we all know we have had AI 50, 60 years back. But what I'm seeing from a trends perspective is, before I get to the details, I would want to state that I was able to successfully deploy conversational AI and generative AI assistants globally and cross functionally, and the adoption has been excellent because employees were able to see the value and they were very quick to adopt to that, right? But when I look at what more can we do to the organization, how can we reimagine the work we are doing? Because traditionally we have been utilizing our corporate tech stacks, let it be your ERP systems, your HCM systems, and you might have gone through multi-year transformation, right? But all of these, you would have to relook at it and reimagine how it would work in future from an AI standpoint. And these are some of the things we would also need to look at it from a strategy perspective. Now, all this should be taken into consideration along with where we are in the AI innovation cycle. Because currently, what we are seeing from an enterprise grade AI standpoint is there are AI security aspects to be addressed if we were to bring in AI to the extent we want to use it, looking at its future potential, because you need to cross the hurdles of the security, right? And you need to be able to address the data privacy aspects. Again, as I said, if I am a leader, I would want to put it in, in business use cases where there is high impact, low risk, as we cross the AI security and data privacy and hallucination aspects, right? So these are some of the things. And one other thing is, as we run the sales cycles for enterprise grade AI tools that are available in the market, um, an interesting aspect is we are seeing the sales teams utilizing the terms of agents versus assistants interchangeably. So you would definitely want to understand more and get that clarity of what that particular tool can do for you. So these are all these different areas I would look at it when I'm building AI strategy for an organization. And it needs to be a journey. It is not a flip of a switch. It cannot be done in a month. It needs to be a journey where you start with productivity, individual productivity, then look at individual business cases, and look at how you want to reimagine your entire work stream of how it is operating. And it could be a multi-year transformation, right? So those are the aspects you need to understand. And it should not be surprising that what you know today might change tomorrow, because the innovation is happening. You are learning new things on the capabilities as well as the limitations. So we need to keep an open mind and take your employees along with this journey. So that's how I would handle AI strategy and as well the AI adoption and deployment for an organization. And when it comes to the governance here, is what I'm seeing is a very interesting trend across the organizations, right? In a attempt to be an AI first company, or we want to get quick productivity savings, we are looking at a trend in terms of, well, let's find and what AI tools are available, let's adopt them, but be aware that you are increasing your technical debt as well. That's where you need to have a strategy in place, because you don't want to bring duplicate tools into your tech stack, and that would require increased support, right? And these are all the aspects I would look at it from a governance standpoint, because you want to have a clear guidelines in place in terms of AI procurement, guiding on AI ethics, privacy, what kind of data you want to feed to the LLM when you're building the agents, versus what kind of data you want your employees to keep off of your AI tools until you figure out the security aspects. So these are the things. Now, if I flip the switch for a minute to the other side of the spectrum, right? Till now, we spoke about the consumer side of how the adoption AI strategy will look like. If I flip the switch on the other side, in terms of the capability, generative AI capability for enterprise grade AI products, what is interesting is the ecosystem we currently have. Is seem to be a bit of a closed ecosystem in terms of the AI token pricing, and it's going to be an interesting thing we would be taking into account in terms of the AI strategy and the roadmap we are putting together. What do I mean by that? Because, see, if I am a tech company and I am selling to consumers, and we are seeing a lot of revenue in terms of AI token consumption, definitely, because that is a return on investment, because I am on the other side of the spectrum. But if I am a consumer, and if I am building an AI use case for my supply chain or my finance or my HR, right? And if my agent is consuming some 20 million tokens or 100 million tokens, that is not directly proportional to the return on investment you see. Your AI agent definitely needs code efficiencies in order to make sure you are realizing the ROI. So you definitely need a very detailed business case in terms of, are you seeing a viable business case in order to bring your AI to an enterprise deployment. So these are all the things I would definitely consider from a strategy versus deployment and governance standpoint.
And you mentioned about security there, cybersecurity. As there's always kind of an increase in the amount of cyber threats, how do you recommend assessing whether tech or data and risk platforms are effectively safeguarding enterprise value?
We're seeing an interesting trend. Not surprisingly, we are seeing a very interesting trend of increasing cyber vulnerabilities being realized. I say this is not about how the organization is doing, it is about the vulnerabilities we are seeing and the creative attacks we are experiencing. So what I have been observing is, most times when we are putting cybersecurity strategy, it is more about how you address, a cyber attack. And based on the organizational maturity, some organizations have a well-established processes in terms of conducting vulnerability assessments and addressing them timely. But what is also more important is, do you have your fundamental security posture implemented correctly in terms of how you are protecting your organizational security by setting up your security protocols and guidelines and controls across the board. So if we look at our enterprise tech stack, right, depending on your organizational size, whether you're a small, medium, or large, you would want to make sure you have a cybersecurity strategy in place and you have efficient guidelines set up that would guide your IT and business teams in terms of what are the aspects they should put in place when they are implementing new technology and bringing it on board. So those are those fundamental aspects, in order to look at it from an application onboarding standpoint, in addition to looking at it from ongoing maintenance standpoint and making sure you're constantly educating your employees on the potential vulnerabilities they need to be aware of. So yeah, this is definitely one aspect. And what I normally am seeing here, which I would address as a from a leadership standpoint, is bringing in cybersecurity early on in your organizational transformations. They are not somebody you should be bringing in only when there is a cyber attack. There should be a partner in terms of when you are assessing and when you are putting together your roadmap for your AI transformation or for your digital transformation, and take them along with your journey, because they will bring in a lot of aspects that need to be considered. So these are all the things I would look at it from a cybersecurity standpoint. And what's more interesting is how cyber is so intertwined with all the technologies you are looking at, and even cross-functionally, right? Because when we are looking at AI transformation, we hear most of the times we look at it more strictly from an AI. You really need to look at it from your compliance. You need to look at it from a cybersecurity standpoint as well, right? Because you are opening yourself for more risks if you are not looking at it from a cyber perspective.
Got it. There's a difference, of course, between systems that work fine versus systems that are going to be very impressive to investors. How do you change mediocre or good enough systems basically into ones that investors are going to view as high value assets?
See, when you are looking to sell your business entity, right? So one of the things you want to make sure is looking at it from a buyer standpoint, right? Because from a seller perspective, you want to maximize the value of your entity when you make the transaction. But for you to get that maximized value for the entity, you want to make sure you are addressing all the buyer potential concerns. Now, what do I mean by that? From a technology standpoint, your buyer would want to understand your IT posture, your cyber posture. Do you have operational efficiencies in place? When they make, when they do the closing for the deal, for example, will there be any integration issues in order to integrate your entity into their tech stack, for example. So there are several aspects that a buyer would potentially want to look at. So if you are looking to sell your entity, these are all the things you want to make sure. In addition to that, you also want to look at it from, do you have all the IT architecture in place? Do you have everything documented that you can share with your buyer in order to help them make the decisions quickly? So these are all the things you would want to look at. So if I am on the seller side, looking to make my entity more investor ready, I would want to look at all of these aspects from a technology standpoint and make sure we have operational efficiencies in place, the documentation in place, architecture details in place, that would help the investor to make their decisions, and be able to close the deal quickly.
Given the evolving ESG mandates across regions, how can ESG priorities be embedded into core business strategy in ways that both create measurable value and mitigate enterprise risk?
So we are seeing an interesting evolution in the ESG space, more from a sustainability standpoint. So historically, when we look at organizations in terms of, the role ESG has played, it has been more along the lines of, well, you need to do shareholder disclosures, or you need to check some check boxes for regulatory reportings across the globe, or you want to meet some guidelines that are set up by various entities in different geographical regions. So these are all the drivers for the ESG, probably, if you look at it a decade back. But what we are seeing at this point is, an increasing need in terms of, if you look at the greenhouse gas emissions and the scope 1, 2, and 3, disclosures we need to make. What we are really seeing on that front is, especially with the overall AI data center trends we are seeing, if you look at it from a consumer standpoint, right? If you take, for example, a large conglomerate or a Fortune company wants to go through AI transformation, what that means is they are increasing their data center footprint. Because if you are deploying AI, it needs compute, and you are increasing your organizational data center footprint. That means you need to look at it from your GHG emission standpoint, right? Which is where it ties with your ESG. So typically what's happening is, when you look at AI transformation, yes, I want to do AI transformation. Maybe my organization wants to do a 2 to 3 year AI transformation across all my functions. But what that is also increasing from my infrastructure standpoint is that footprint of that data centers, meaning you want to bring your sustainability team, look at it from your sustainability strategy perspective, and you want to relook at the data points you are collecting in terms of tracking your carbon emissions, and update your ESG reporting based on that, right? You cannot use your old data points when you are on the other side doing AI transformation, increasing your data center footprint by going through AI transformation. And so that is what it means from an ESG perspective for organizations that are currently going through AI transformation and that will continue to go through AI transformation. Now, the other side of it is, when we look at the sustainability from a climate perspective, right? There are some industry sectors that are highly vulnerable to climate risks. And for example, if you take insurance, real estate, and these are some of the industries, and there are several others, right, that are highly vulnerable. And even if you look at it from industrial sector, that is also vulnerable to climate risk. And these industry sectors, we are seeing an increasing trend in terms of looking at sustainability from a core business strategy standpoint, because it's no longer your reporting or disclosure. It's part of your core business strategy here, because based on the climate risk, how it is evolving, you need to change your business strategy. What you have been doing before may not work for you. in the future. So it's more about being proactive and giving more focus to your sustainability strategy in order to see if it's giving you the required visibility and data driven points to make decisions about your business strategy. So these are the things we are seeing more from a ESG and sustainability standpoint. So definitely a lot of increasing focus on ESG and sustainability standpoint from both the GHG and as well the business strategies perspective.
And in the current sort of environment of changing sanctions and data and AI regulations and stuff like that, how do you ensure that compliance frameworks are robust, but also effectively integrated with tech and risk platforms, and are going to be kind of solid for the long term, and they protect that enterprise value?
Yeah, it is very interesting, Stuart, because we are seeing increased needs from a compliance perspective, and it's not happening just in this month or a year or so. This is happening gradually, but what we are definitely seeing is a increasing trend in terms of the compliance requirements that are driven by various external factors. Now, what are those external factors? Those are regulatory policies that are emerging across various geographies, right? If you are a global company handling the compliance needs, obviously you need to account for all the regional compliance needs. And if you are a US based company, you still need to account for various guidelines that are emerging across state level guidelines that are emerging from an AI perspective. Whereas if you look at it, APAC or EME or Latin America, you're seeing regional regulations emerging on that front from an AI perspective. In addition to that, we are also seeing increasing compliance needs emerging from a data privacy perspective, and other compliance needs from an organizational standpoint. So what I'm seeing here is a need in terms of having a compliance governance in place, because it's not a one-time said and done thing. You need to set up the organization in a way that you have a process in place that would help you track the compliance requirements originating from various governing bodies across the geographies where your organization have a presence, and make sure that you have a roadmap in place where you are implementing these in order to avoid any regulatory penalties the organization might potentially expose itself to if you are not timely acting on that. So definitely what I do anticipate, and I'm seeing trends towards increasing tech investments towards compliance as well, due to all the regional variations in the compliance needs we are increasingly seeing across the board.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. You've been kind of at the helm or at the leadership of digital transformations in a lot of different industries. How do you tailor those transformation strategies for sectors as different and diverse as tech, industrials, life sciences, and energy?
Definitely. If you look at it from a tech standpoint, right, the adoption cycles, the implementation would be pretty fast when your tech, when your organization sector itself is tech. Whereas I focus on some other industry sectors here. Let's say if you are handling a industrial sector, right? What matters more there is in terms of your efficiency, the productivity, right? These are the aspects that take more precedence, that would help move your business strategy forward when you put together the um, organizational technology transformation strategy. Whereas when it comes to, if you look at it from a retail standpoint, or if you look at it from a consumer goods standpoint, you want to obviously take a look at your business strategy and the business goals, and you want to look at making sure that your tech strategy is aligning with your business strategy. You cannot say that, well, my business is operating this way, but from tech standpoint, this is how I want to operate. That doesn't work that way. Tech always has to align with business strategy to move the needle forward from a business standpoint. So those are all the different aspects I would look at it, from a technology transformation standpoint when addressing these for various industry sectors.
Looking ahead 3 to 5 years, which technology investments do you see as the most critical for enterprises to drive value and ensure organizational resilience? And why do you think that?
Yeah, so I would think definitely AI is something we would continue to look at. We are in a maturity curve for AI technology. We are in the early stages of it. And when I say we are in the early stages of it, I'm speaking from a work tech standpoint. At this point, I see more focus on the individual productivity perspective, but there's more to come from an enterprise grade AI standpoint in order for us to reimagine the work, how it's going to look like when we really reimagine our overall workflows for various business functions, various corporate functions. So there's more to come on that front, and we are in the very early stages of that. So I do anticipate more increasing focus and investments there. The second aspect is within AI, the area I would definitely expect to see more coming in is the AI security aspect. That is one area where I do see increasing focus coming in, because an interesting observation I have is there is a lot of positivity around AI, right? Which is very good in terms of, when I interact with, leaders across various business functions, including tech and business. There is a lot of positivity around in terms of what it can do to the business. So definitely, that is going to help in terms of adopting AI, right? So I do see that. And in addition to that, the third one I would definitely say is ESG and sustainability. Right. These are the three, for the reasons I stated earlier. But yeah, very interesting thing I think, I would want to share from an AI perspective is, AI currently, depending on how you're leading the deployment, I do see some organizations, or, especially the narratives we are seeing, it makes it looks like a zero-sum game, right? You would not want to approach AI deployment as a zero-sum game, because, as much as it is looking at it like that, in my perspective, the way I see it is it's a non-zero sum game in the end. It's more about the outcomes, the timeline delays between the outcomes for each parties. But in my perspective, AI is really a non-zero sum game. Either all parties win or the other way around, depending on how you handle it. So we have the opportunity to take all the stakeholders, make them part of the journey, and take them along with us and make this a more positive experience, because there is a lot of potential, but then there are also some opportunities for improvement that still need to be addressed there. So it's definitely a long journey is what I would see, but potentially a lot of investments in these areas.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of incredible value and insights for anyone watching or listening. So thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with us.
Great. Thank you very much.
And for anyone watching or listening that wants to connect with Suchi, the best way to do that is on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, which you probably are, then she'll be tagged as a host or an attendee or something like that. So yeah, definitely worth getting in touch with, booking a meeting with, and seeing if there's potential to work with us. So for the viewers, thanks for watching. Suchi, thanks so much for coming on and sharing all of this value with everyone. And we'll see everyone in the next one.
My pleasure. Thank you.